Hey everyone, James from TeaDB here bringing another Inbetweenisode. Today I am going to be talking about some recent tastings that I did about some Taiwanese oolong, some roasted oolong, so a little bit of an atypical episode. So I actually did a blind tasting recently with a group of other tea fans, tea friends, and we basically bought one roasted oolong from 5 different vendors. We bought 2 from one vendor, TeaHome, and we blinded them. So we did A, B, C, D, E, F, and then we tried them that way. And I've done actually a fair amount of blind tastings this year, oddly enough, and I've done some in the past. They're an interesting exercise, so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. And then at the end of the episode, I'll bring on one of the teas that I actually enjoyed at the most, although it wasn't necessarily the group consensus. I will talk about that a little bit later on. So when I did these tastings this time, I went through all 6 of them relatively fast. There's some days where I'd have 2 in one day, especially if I'm working out, maybe even 3 if it was a more intense workout. And then I basically cycled back and tried them all again. And then after I tried them all twice, they were unblinded, or no, they weren't unblinded, but I learned everyone's ratings, and then I went through them one last time. After we knew how other people rated them. And it turns out that I am fairly atypical on these ratings, and I found this out also in a different oolong tasting I did. I think in pu'er I tend to line up a little bit more with general conventional views in the space, but for oolongs I can get rather picky on preferring a certain level of roast, where I do like my tea. I've always had a preference towards darker teas, but I also don't like my tea roasted too much to death. So as a result, I think I can be a little bit picky on sort of the tea that I'm actually picking. So it's interesting to try these teas side by side. It's been a long time. I mean, of course, I've had Taiwanese oolong throughout the years, but it's been a long time before I've done a little bit more of a focused dive into this as a category of tea. It was, of course, my introduction to more serious tea in general, but it's also it's something I have around. I maybe drink it maybe once every 10 days or so, but it's not like necessarily the most interesting. To me, these teas definitely qualify as more daily drinkers. So tasting a bunch of roasted oolong, one thing that was really emphasized to me is that what people think of as a roasted oolong really has quite a range. There are some teas, one tea in particular in this set, that I'll be honest, I was a little shocked at what can pass as a roasted oolong, as the tea was really, really quite green and much more in that high mountain style to my taste. It's possible that if you're drinking a bunch of high mountain tea and then you had that tea, it might seem comparatively roasted. But for me, coming at it not from drinking a lot of Taiwanese oolong and stuff like that, the tea felt very, very green. And a lot of these other teas also were just in fairly different styles, in the sense that you're more picking the style of tea that you personally prefer rather than what is quote unquote the best. And I say that as someone that maybe had divergent views from the panel on these teas. So maybe other people will see it a little bit differently than myself. But for me, I found it very difficult to compare certain roasting styles to other ones, just because they're so very different in terms of either roasting or oxidation, and the profiles are very different. So for me, it came off far more as a personal preference thing, rather than necessarily one is much better than the other. Of course, there were some consensuses. There was one tea that was towards the bottom for everyone. So there were definitely some things that were kind of general themes in the group. But for me, at least, one of my takeaways is that tastes can be a little all over the place. Okay, so let's get into the tea. All right, so Gabe, steep number 1 here. Brewing a fairly light color, so maybe I should extend it a bit. I don't use flash steeps for Taiwanese oolongs. I am using about 4 grams for 70 milliliters. I'll use anywhere from 4 to 5. To me, this is a very casual sort of tea, so you can be pretty flexible on that. So yeah, let's take a quick whiff of the wet leaves. Nice sweetness coming off them. Smell that roast. For me, at least, I am personally a fan of this style of roast. And I think that's probably the main dividing line on tea such as this. Some people were off put by the roast, and others like me, I think I was probably the person that liked it the most. But I'm also the weirdo on the panel that rated this tea and another one towards the top. So cheers. Nice body. Nice. You can definitely taste that roast in there. For me, it's a nice sort of almost acorn nut type sweetness, as well as maybe a little bit of caramel. Nice body. Really quite a simple tea overall. Simple, I don't think of as bad at all. A little floral as well. So a couple things going on. I did note that this tea does have rather large leaves, which is usually somewhat of a positive sign when it comes to these teas. Usually steep-wise, I will brew the first steep a little bit longer and then the second one a little bit shorter, just because the leaves are starting to get a little unrolled there. So, I don't know, did 10-15 seconds right there. Take another smell. Yeah, definitely fairly roasty. I know that one person that felt a little more negative about this tea described it as ashy. For me, I actually like the smell of this, so I'm not off-put by it. So what one person likes is not necessarily what the other person dislikes. Yeah, a little bit more on blind tastings as well. For me, I do like to do them on occasion. To me, they're also quite a bit more academic and intellectually engaging than they are actual fun. I feel like it's just more going through your mind when you are drinking a tea. You're wondering where it is, or what it is, where it was grown, stuff about the processing and stuff like that. And of course, you can think about that stuff too when you're drinking a tea of more known provenance. But when you're blind and stuff, you're really engaging more sort of on a cerebral level of just trying to figure it out. And I think some people might really get a kick out of that and enjoy it, and I do too at certain times. But and I do think it's an interesting and pretty good way to evaluate tea. I think you can certainly evaluate tea that way, as well as then cycling back after it's unblinded and trying it again. And it might sort of give you a new perspective once you understand a little bit more of the context behind the tea. But I do think it's an interesting way to do a tea, and probably something that people should try to do more often. It's also kind of a pain to set up, but I have not done the setting up for any of these, so I appreciate people that have done it. Cheers. Yeah, so pretty constant again. Just a tiny bit of bitterness on this, so I don't think I understeeped it. Definitely in that sort of nutty, floral range to me. When I was first getting into tea, this is definitely the style of tea that I thought of as being like a roasted oolong. So I did find it to be a little surprising, the different sorts of roasted oolongs that different vendors carried, just in the sense that to me, they were very much on the light roast side of things. And there's something to be said for that style, but perhaps my expectations have been shaded by just my early experiences with Taiwanese roasted oolongs. Okay, yeah, so solid tea, enjoyable. I'll probably have a few more steeps. Tea like this, I don't think it's necessarily worth spending a ton of money, which is good because this tea is from TeaHome, and we actually couldn't figure out which of the two TeaHome teas it was. So it's either the organic roast, which I believe is MOA on their site, or the handcrafted roasted reserve. So one of those two teas, I think it was about 8 or 9 cents per gram, so quite inexpensive, especially when you're using like 4 grams like this. So your session is literally setting you back like 40 cents. So really not bad at all. Something you can guiltlessly just do a couple steeps in and dump. Okay, so thank you all for tuning in. Let me know how you enjoyed this, if you found this interesting or just a little all over the place. Let me know if you've had any experience with blind tastings of tea before or anything else really. and how you kind of generally feel about them. Is it something you really enjoy, or do you sort of feel similar to me where you have sort of mixed feelings on it, where it's maybe not the most enjoyable way to drink tea? You find maybe just a little unsettling not to know, and it's engaging different parts, which is good in sort of an intellectual and thinking about stuff way, but maybe not the most fun way to drink it. Thank you all for tuning in. I will see you all next time.